Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode number 360 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are recording this show about 15 minutes after the conclusion of Duke's game against the Citadel, 107-81, the final score there. I am here, Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. We have Jason Evans here. Sam is unable to make it on since we're at a late hour on Monday, November 22nd. Again, we're recording about 15 minutes after the conclusion of the basketball game. So, Jason, hello, good evening. How did you enjoy that game?
Well, I mean, for the first time all season, the Blue Devils managed to crack the triple-digit barrier, so it was a lot of fun. On the other hand, is there anything more frustrating than watching the opposing team rain threes upon you all game long?
Yeah. We will definitely get in.
They were hot. They could not miss.
They were on fire. Yeah, we will definitely get into that. Before we get into our normal recap, this is just going to be a quick recap of this game against the Citadel. Before we get into it, we do want to make note of the fact that if you're watching this or listening to this later, or you have not watched the game, the Citadel, we had a scary moment in the first minute or so of the ball game. The Citadel head coach, Duger Bokum, appeared to faint on the bench and then was helped off the court after being tended to by medical personnel. We have not seen any updates to his condition that has been put out there, but he walked off under his own power. Again, he was helped. He didn't appear to lose consciousness or anything like that. But of course, we all wish Coach Bokum the very best. He is apparently, by all accounts, one of the great guys in college basketball. So we hope that he's doing okay, that it's nothing serious, and that he is back coaching on the sidelines really soon.
And not that there is ever a good time to have a health scare like this, but he was at Duke, one of the premier medical centers in the entire country. And supposedly he got taken very quickly over to the Duke Medical Center. And I'm sure that some of the best doctors in the world are taking care of him right now. So like Donald's, I wish him all the best. I don't know. I doubt he got to see very much of what happened with his team, but I thought his team acquitted itself very, very nicely.
Yeah. They had a very inspired performance in his absence. But again, we wish him the very best and hope he's doing okay. We translate that into going into the game, which, appeared to be a blowout of sorts. Duke wins by 107-81, as I mentioned. First 100-point output of the season, as Jason mentioned. So we want to get to our quick headline. Jason, what is your headline from this game?
I've got Citadel bombs away, but Paolo and Moore were too much.
That's a good one. I didn't really come up with anything clever, so I'm just going to say a century. We finally hit it. That's all I'm going to say. Because again, that's that game that, we're looking shaky. It's funny. We talked about in the last episode, whether or not we would, what games were prime for 100-point outputs, and we didn't have to wait long for it. So shout out to the Duke players who clearly listened to this podcast and wanted to give a nice 100-point output for us. So I want to move to the good, and Jason, there was quite a lot of good. And I think for me, I want to start, you said Paolo Banchero. I will mention Paolo Banchero, 28 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 block, 2 steals. The man was everywhere. Hit all of his free throws, shot 53% from the floor. He had some frustrating moments during the game where, he kind of had a couple of things where you could see that he was frustrated and he wasn't feeling like he was playing very well, but he snapped out of it and was able to be Paolo that we've seen so far this year and really just kind of, put those frustrating moments behind him and focus on the next play. And he was able to get a lot of great plays in this basketball game.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something interesting I've noticed about him. You can tell he is getting increasingly confident in his 3-point shot, in his ability to go outside. He in this game, he attempted 5 3-pointers, which is the most he's had in any game all season long. As he As he develops that outside part of his game, it's going to make the inside part of the game even more lethal. I think that when he, like you said, when he got frustrated, especially it was in the first half, I noticed with 2 pointers that he expected to go down, not going down, he starts to really understand that he needs to get closer and closer to the basket and take advantage of his size and his bulk. And he absolutely did that in this game. And then the other thing I thought was, we've heard all this talk that Paolo is a guard in a power forward's body. He really showed that tonight. There were a couple times, first of all, like you said, 6 assists, which I haven't looked and seen. I'm 90% certain it's got to be his career high. But even more than that, I saw some really fancy ball handling. There was a moment late in the contest where he pulled down a rebound. This was in the final 3 or 4 minutes. Pulled down a rebound. As he started to dribble, one of the guards for Citadel was right there on top of him, and he went behind his back on the dribble to get around that guard. He took 2 or 3 dribbles and got just past midcourt, and he recognized that Mark Williams was wide open underneath the basket. He drove to the defense so they came even closer to him, and then fed Mark for an easy slam dunk. It was the kind of play you just don't see a 6'10", 250-pound guy make. There, you hate to say Kevin Durant, players like that, but there's a very finite list of guys who are capable of doing that kind of thing at that size, and Paolo is one of them.
Yeah, and I want to segue by saying this. There was, like I said, there was those couple moments in the first half where he looked like he was frustrated and he was trying to get down on himself. There was one man that went over and talked to him on a couple of those occasions and just got him to settle down and quickly get his head back onto the next play, the next possession. And that's Wendell Moore. And I segue that because Wendell Moore, I want to shout out my man, Mark Hecker, who asked me just after this game ended, before we were able to get on, Jason, can Wendell Moore average 10-5-5 for this entire season? I know we had in the stats game for number of games he could do it, but it's looking more and more likely that this is going to be, again, he's going to be putting up Shane Battier numbers for the entirety of the season. This was no exception. I give it to you to take about Wendell Moore, but he was 1 assist and 2 rebounds shy of a triple-double. That's pretty damn good.
So the guy already has one of the 5 triple-doubles in Duke history. I want to repeat that, even though folks I think already know it. In the history of Duke basketball, not Coach K, not the one and done era or anything like that. Since Duke basketball started playing the sport, there have been 5 guys who got a triple-double. He's one of them. And he almost had another one tonight. I won't be even remotely surprised if this guy ends this season with 2 or 3 triple-doubles on the year, maybe even more than that. This game, like you said, 22 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, a steal, and a partridge in a pear tree. It was just a ridiculous performance by him, and we're getting to be used to this kind of performance from him. That's the crazy thing, that he's doing all this, and we're like, yeah, that's what Wendell Moore does virtually every game. It really is tremendously, tremendously impressive. And oh yeah, by the way, playing great defense every moment as well. How can you not be doing the Shane Battier comparisons? It's almost impossible.
I say it every time.
Not. You can't. You got to.
Look, I call them Shane Battier numbers for a reason, because he was the quintessential example of all of those numbers, the 10-5-5s, and just being the ever-present stat stuffer. And Wendell Moore is just doing that in bunches this year so far. And literally every stat, he like even fouls, he's almost like, yo, I have to foul someone just to make sure that there's a 1 in that column too. If you look across the stat sheet for all these games, there are numbers that are not 0 in almost every single category, which is incredible.
And folks should remember, by the way, Wendell Moore, we feel like he's exploding this year as a junior. He played a good bit, a lot, and had significant moments as a freshman and a sophomore, but wasn't nearly the kind of offensive force in terms of scoring, in terms of assists, and in terms of rebounds that he's turned into this year. That's the Shane Battier profile. Shane Battier, folks may not recall because we remember so much how great he was as a junior and a senior. Freshman and a sophomore, Shane was a starter, and he played a lot, and he was a very, very, very good defender, best defender in the country. But he was not a big scorer. He was not a guy who was putting up big statistical numbers until his junior year. He wasn't a guy who took outside shots until his junior year. Wendell Moore is following the same kind of pattern, which is another reason why you feel like, and it's, by the way, it's unfair to Wendell. I mean, we shouldn't be doing this. Shane Battier's arguably, I don't know, one of the three, certainly, I guess the three, maybe five best Duke players of all time. Some would say the best Duke player of all time. We can get into an argument.
I wouldn't even put Duke in that equation. When you said top 3 or 4, I think he's one of the top 3 or 4 college players that ever played the game, because he's one of the best. He held the wins record for almost 20 years. Right. And on top of all the other stuff that he's done, like, everyone knows I'm biased. That's my man's, but it also happens to be true.
So like I say, I think it's almost a little bit unfair for us to be comparing Wendell in this way, but there just aren't any other comps in Duke history that you can look back on and say, oh, this is another guy who played in this same kind of way. This is another guy, with forward kind of height who plays more like a point guard. This is another guy who's a lockdown defender, but also a threat to score a lot and have a ton of assists. There just aren't that many comps. If he's Shane Battier light, I'm fine with that.
That is a very good comparison. If he's 50% or 30% of the player that Shane Battier is, that's still a really, really good player. But I want to shift real quick. One of the goods that I want to talk about is more of a team good, and that is from the free throw line. I had said after the last game, that free throw shooting needed to be a point of emphasis, and they needed to focus on that. Well, they did that. They went 27 of 29 from the free throw line, which means they were getting to the line.
You absolutely called it last game.
It means they were getting to the line and they were making their free throws. And if you're going to get free shots from the free throw line and you make them, you're going to win ball games, especially at that clip, 93%. That's what you want to see from a Duke basketball team, getting to the line. And even 29 shots is a lot of free throws. And I understand that, but to make them all is another animal. And to do that at the clip that they were doing is incredible. So I want to shout out the team for, again, listening to the podcast and taking our points of emphasis and applying them to this game at Citadel and making sure they made their free throws. Jason, I know you wanted to talk about another big man who had a very big presence tonight, and that is big Mark Williams.
Yeah. So Mark Williams, to me, had one of the more interesting stories of the game, because the first half was close, and we're going to get in when we get into the bad. We're going to talk about the Citadel just raining 3-pointers on us, and it being a very, very competitive game throughout much of the first half, and even up to halftime. 10 points at halftime is not an insurmountable kind of lead. And in the first half, the Citadel played Mark Williams off the floor. It was another one of these situations where I think Coach K thought, I've got to go small to match this other team that is playing small. And Mark Williams, and to a lesser extent, Theo John, did not get their normal kind of minutes in the first half. Duke, for a while, especially late in the first half, was going, 4 around 1, and the one in the middle was Paolo, and that Duke was surrounding him with 4 perimeter players. And I thought, oh no, here we are. We've seen this story before. We saw this against Campbell, that Mark Williams, is a non-factor. For him to come back and have the second half that he had, for him to end the game with 14 points, 2 block shots, he probably changed another 5 or 6 shots, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists, I thought was, and 6 of 7 on his field goals, by the way, like he hit everything he took. I thought it's just a great effort from him. And it plays into one of the key aspects of the game to me, with Citadel just raining threes. Duke had to find another way to beat them, and the way we beat them was on the boards. Duke out rebounds the Citadel 46-29. Like I said, Mark had 7, Paolo had 8, Wendell had 8, Joey Baker and Theo John had 4 each. I mean, we crushed them 46-29 on the boards. And a really significant part of that was the offensive rebounding. Duke ends this game with 18 offensive rebounds. We rebounded 46% of our missed shots. When Duke had a missed shot, we rebounded it 46% of the time. It's a huge, huge number, and huge props to the team, because rebounding is all about effort. And then the last thing I wanted to get to really, really quick, we had a ton of assists in this game. Duke has 25 assists on 30 something made baskets. I should look. 36 made baskets, 25 assists and 36 made baskets, which comes to, we assisted on almost 70% of our baskets. The team was moving the ball better than they have lately. At the beginning of the season, this Duke team was a team that went one-on-one. That's how we beat Kentucky. And we are now a team that is finding our teammates and finding the best shot with the pass. And, look, we got a big game coming up at the end of this week. And we're going to have to do more than play one-on-one to do it. And hand in hand with that great passing and those great assists, Donald, did you see Duke had only 3 turnovers in this game? That's a ridiculous number. 25 assists and 3 turnovers. That's just
we
stupid
talked.
numbers.
They literally listened to our last show because we talked about every single thing that we have, all the good that we've done in this game. We talked about in the last episode as points of emphasis for this game. So I'm glad you mentioned the assists. I'm glad you mentioned the turnovers, because it wasn't just that, they were finding open men and they were hitting open baskets. There was a lot of great team basketball with a lot of passes, 5, 6, 7 passes on a possession, going inside the paint, finding one more open man on the floor who would pass it to it, kick it out to another guy, and then another guy's in the corner. And all of a sudden you're like, presto changeo, this dude's just been in the corner the whole time, nails a 3. Like those sort of possessions.
And it wasn't even the threes. To me, it was the possessions like that ended with us getting easy shots in the lane, whether it be layups or dunks. That was the really impressive part to me. In fact, you could almost say that we probably took too many threes in this game. Duke ends up attempting 30 3-pointers. I'd rather that number be in the low 20s probably. Unless they're really, falling for you, and they weren't. We only hit 26%. To me, the impressive thing was those assists that led to slam dunks and easy layups.
Yeah. And I mean, those demoralize the team. It gives you an extra boost of confidence when you know that you can basically have the ball on the string all the way around the perimeter, inside the paint, outside the paint, and then just lay it in or have a dunk. I mean, Theo John had a couple of plays where he was able to get the basket, and you could tell the other team, like Citadel, was just like, man, like even guys coming off the bench are scoring. Like that is a demoralizing thing, and that's what you want to see. So I'm glad we mentioned the assists. I'm glad we mentioned the lack of turnovers. 3 turnovers is outstanding. I will take that every single game and then some. So in fact, I'll even say you can have 5. We can give you 2 more and still be a really good output from that standpoint. So we'll leave it there with the good. We're going to pause for a quick break. On the other side, we love cake, but we have to have the veggies. We'll do that on the other side of the break. Okay, we are back, and we are now going to discuss. We've talked about the good. It's now time to talk about the bad. And Jason, I will start with you. I have a feeling I know what it is, but what is your main bad takeaway from this game?
Well, if you listen to the broadcast, you heard the announcers say it. The Citadel set a record in the history of Cameron for 3-pointers made. They ended up hitting 18 out of 34, almost 53% from 3. And it was tremendously impressive for a team to be able to keep up with Duke the way they were by raining 3-pointer after 3-pointer after 3-pointer. It was, it was inexplicable. Some of them were really difficult shots that they were making. And I want to put this in perspective. Duke had held 4 consecutive opponents to less than 60 points. Which is the second longest streak of Mike Krzyzewski's career at Duke. There have been 3 different times that we held teams to less than 60 points in 5 straight games. We had a streak of 4 consecutive games of less than 60 points. Citadel comes in and scores 81 against a defense that was playing that well. And by the way, in the first 5 games of the season, Duke's opponents had only hit 25% of their 3-pointers. 25%. Citadel comes in, hits better than 50%. They were, they executed beautifully on offense. They got shots that they wanted. I was shocked that they were making as many as they were, but props to them. And the other thing about it was, Donald, there was something that you talked about last podcast about Duke getting all the loose balls and Duke guys diving on the floor and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that Duke's effort wasn't there in this game, because it was, but I was, in the first half especially, I was really impressed. And maybe it was just luck. A lot of it looked like it was just luck. It felt like every time there was a deflection, Every time there was a ball that would hit the rim in a funky kind of way and rebound weirdly, there were a couple of times air balls that, where there's no rebound there, it went to the Citadel. Every time. It was getting crazy. Mark Williams must have had 3 or 4 times that he deflected passes in the lane, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's good," and it would deflect right to a guy from
and
the
it would
Citadel,
go straight to a Citadel player who'd hit a 3,
who'd hit a 3 or hit a layup, like uncontested, because there's no way the defense can adjust to something like that. It happened again and again and again. Again, like I say, I'm not sure if it's bad luck or bad defense. I think it's mostly bad luck. We'll take all the bad luck in this game. I want some good luck coming up on Friday.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 3-pointers, and I want to talk about that for a second. We beat them 107-81. So we beat them by 26 points, and that's with them hitting 18 threes. If they hit half of those, like if that number's cut in half, if they hit 9 threes, which is still a lot of threes, we would have destroyed this team. It would have been, everyone would have been playing. Jason, they might have flown you up to Durham in the second half, and you could have gotten playing time alongside me as the point guard. So
there you go, man.
It would have been great, but hats off to them because, again, like you said, some of their shots weren't great shots, but they were going in. So that means they were great shots because they were going in and they were hitting. It was really, like I said, it felt like they were playing inspired basketball. They were obviously embracing the moment of being in Cameron. They hung in it. It wasn't like they were, blown out of the gym from the opening tip. They were hanging with Duke throughout the first half. And, even if Duke gets up 10 points, 11 points, they would figure out a way to get it down to single digits. And so I really applaud them for their effort because the Citadel really came to play. They just were outmatched by a better Duke team. Yeah.
And so let me get to my other bad, if you want to call it bad. Yeah, we'll call it bad. Trevor Keels, feels to me like he's struggling a little bit past couple games. He had a great game, remember, the other day against Gardner Webb, and we talked about, he rained 3-pointers. He was 4 of 6 from 3. In this game, he's just 1 of 7 from 3 and only attempted 2 2-point shots. So he ends up being 2 of 9 from the field. Now he got a bunch of free throws and that's great. And he, he's still playing really good, solid defense. Hugely important player for the Blue Devils, but it feels like he's a little off on his long range shooting touch lately. And look, I can think of no better time for him to fix that than a little bit later this week. But, if we're going to be honest, if we're going to talk about all of the good things that happened, we do need to mention the bad. Like I said earlier, I think Duke attempted too many 3-pointers, especially in the first half. It felt like we were settling for threes, sometimes very early in the shot clock. And it wasn't, by the way, it wasn't just Trevor Keels. There were several other guys. Wendell Moore took 1 or 2 threes that I thought were bad. And, it happens. But that was my other bad thing. I got nothing else in the bad category. For the most part, I thought this was a really good game against an opponent who made it more competitive than it probably should have been.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit of my other bad, and that was the 3-point shooting. The fact that they were 8 for 30. You were talking about Trevor Keels, and he has had a struggle of late from deep, but there's guys who had obviously a big cooling off, despite the fact that we scored 107 points. No one shot well from beyond the arc. Wendell Moore, 2 for 7. Paolo Banchero, 2 for 5. Jeremy Roach, 2 for 6. Trevor Keels was 1 for 7. And then even the guys off the bench who have come on and hit threes of late. AJ Griffin did not hit a 3. Joey Baker did not hit a 3. And Jalen Blake's hit 1 late. He was 1 for 2. So we see that, again, like you said, settling for 3-pointers is one thing. I also think it's part of the good because I think they missed a lot of open threes that came as a result of the great team basketball that they were playing with passing the ball around. There were some that just didn't hit. But I think, like you said, they did eventually settle to going into the basket, getting points, and then, for some of them, earning it at the free throw line and making those free throws. That's what we want to see. We want to see more of that and having more of a balance between the 2-point shots and the 3-point shots.
And by the way, you mentioned AJ Griffin's name. It is worth noting on the heels of his breakout performance in the very last game, AJ only plays 11 minutes in this contest. He's only 1 of 4 from the field. And that one was basket, like with, 30, 45 seconds remaining. It was true garbage time kind of bucket. He played a good bit in the first half. In fact, remember when I was talking about when Duke was playing 4 around 1 with Paolo in the middle, AJ was part of the 4 who was surrounding him. And those were important minutes when the game was still very, very competitive. But in the second half, when Duke really blew this game open, AJ wasn't a part of that at all and played very, very little, I thought, in the second half. So we're still looking for him to find, the consistency and the kind of output that we know he's capable of.
Yeah. And I think he'll be fine. And again, he's going to have these days, especially coming off the bench. It's really, as you know, Jason, it's really hard to always be hot when you come off the bench. Only a few players in the history have ever been really good all the time at coming off of the bench. The microwave, Vinnie Johnson, obviously my guy, Lou Williams, the probably is going to go into the Hall of Fame as a sixth man, but like very few guys, it's hard to come off the bench, score 20 or 18 one game, and then try to do it again and be consistent with that every single time. So he'll learn, he'll grow from this. So, it wasn't the best shooting night for him or the best offensive night for him, but I think he'll rebound. And again, like you said before, no better way to rebound than to do it against the number one team in the country this Friday.
Hey, I got a quick note about the Citadel that just blew me away during this game. I had no idea about this, and it's going to mean nothing to anybody but me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So in the second half, at one point, there was a reserve guard, he was kind of short. You may have noticed him, number 3 for them. He was 3 for 3 on 3-pointers, and he hit a 3-pointer, and they go, Rudy Fitzgibbons. And I went, Rudy Fitzgibbons. I paused. I backed up my tape. I was watching with my son who's in town for Thanksgiving. I went, oh my God, that's Rudy. So I coached this kid. Believe it or not.
Wait, really?
Yes, I'm completely serious. When he was in 7th grade, Rudy Fitzgibbons played basketball with my son at my son's high school. I was an assistant coach of the basketball team that year. I knew him really well. He was incredibly short. He was like 5'2", but just like a really great ball handler, and he could really shoot from the outside. And we were like, oh, I can't wait till this guy's in high school and he's going to be a great player for us in high school. My kids went to a very, very small private school here in Atlanta. And unfortunately, the next year we came back to school and Rudy had left. He was gone. He'd gone on to a bigger, better basketball program. He ended up averaging 25 points per game as a senior for this big private public school that's sort of near our area. I was like, oh man, Rudy, if he'd stayed at my little tiny private school, he would have just been dominant. But I had no idea that he was playing college ball now. So he's a junior reserve guard for Citadel. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I know that kid. And it was funny because they showed a hero shot after he made his 3. And I was like, that's totally him. Sorry, it means nothing to anybody, but like I said, but me, but it was pretty exciting for me.
No, it means for me, it's the first time I learned that you were once a basketball coach. So we're going to have to dive into that on future shows, your expertise from the coaching sidelines of middle school basketball in Atlanta. So when that comes up, we will let you know, Jason, you are our expert on that. So you have to be ready. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But congrats to Rudy Fitzgibbons. Is it
Rudy Fitzgibbons? Yeah. From Atlanta,
Rudy
Georgia.
Fitzgibbons, former protege of Jason Evans, and playing well in Cameron tonight. So we're going to leave it there. Again, 107-81, the final score. Duke wins over the Citadel. The next big game is the big game on Friday night. That, of course, is going to be in Las Vegas against Gonzaga. I will be in the building. So if you are in Vegas, holler at me. I think I'm going to one of the Iron Duke things that is going to be set up. So just come find me there. Ask for the guy on the podcast. Someone will raise their hand. It's probably going to be me. Jason, I'm going to hold it down for you and Sam in Vegas. I know you cannot make it. I know Sam cannot make it, but man, am I looking forward to it.
Oh, and by the way, I want to shout out. We had a great email. By the way, folks, we've been getting more email than regular lately, and we love it. And we respond. I promise everyone, you send us an email to dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We respond to every single email we get. We got a great one this evening from listener Josh, who pointed out, this is a fabulous fact. He said, have you noticed that Duke plays 4 games this year against 4 different teams that all are called the Bulldogs? Gardner-Webb, the Citadel, Gonzaga, and South Carolina State. All 4 of them are the Bulldogs. And I noticed they were playing all 4 of them in a span of 6 games. So we just finished playing the Bulldogs today. And at the end of this week, we play the Bulldogs again on Friday in Las Vegas. So I just thought that was a cool fun note. And also I want folks to know, we will be doing an extensive preview of the Gonzaga game. We're going to have everything you could possibly want to know to preview that game. but that's going to come on Wednesday because tomorrow we're all going to watch Gonzaga play UCLA. we're gonna
we can't scout the team without that.
Yeah.
I will say, Jason, it's funny that we're mentioning that because first of all, I want to point out a quick stat that I saw from my friend Joe Four about the Citadel. We know they went 18 for 34. That came from 5 guys. Okay. 3 guys went a combined 2 for 16, and the other 5 guys went 16 for 18 from 3. So it was really
including
5
Rudy
guys,
Fitzgibbons, including Rudy
Fitzgibbons. So like, that's kind of interesting. The other point, Jason, and it's funny you bring this up about Gonzaga, UCLA tomorrow on Tuesday night, as we record, it will be 1 versus 2 in the AP poll. Now, Jason, I don't know if you saw this today, but on the women's side, we had a 1 versus 2 matchup. South Carolina versus UConn. And I think there was the battle for Atlantis women's championship. Okay. Their preseason tournament.
South Carolina won going away.
It was a very close game until the fourth quarter. And then South Carolina steadily pulled away. They're a very, very good ball club. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because 1 versus 2 happens quite frequently in women's basketball. It doesn't happen as much in the regular season in the men, but it definitely does in the women. This is only the second time in the history of the AP poll on the women's side that they have delayed the women's poll by a day. The reason why they did that is because it was supposed to come out this afternoon during said game between South Carolina and UConn, and they wanted to wait for the result of that game before they released the poll. I thought that was fascinating. That again, I think they did it once back in 1991 or something like that. But this is the second time in the history of the AP poll that they have delayed it so that everyone could watch 1 versus 2 play. So I think it's interesting that they did that today, and Duke Gonzaga at 1 versus 2 on the men's side will be playing on Tuesday night.
Yep. I got nothing else, man. We got to go. We got to let the Duke band play so that we can get ready for the Gonzaga game.
Yes. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 360 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We will be back again, probably Wednesday, to preview the Gonzaga game that will be on Friday night. Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena, 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Stay up. Make sure you take your caffeine and coffee, whatever you need to do. It's go time. Happy Thanksgiving from all of us here. We will again talk to you on Wednesday. But for now, for Jason, for Sam and Estencia, I am down the line. Duke Band, you know what time it is. Take us home.